Hi, Total Recapped here. Today, we will be going through the events of a 2011 American superhero film, X-Men First Class. Now, let's get right into the movie. In Poland in 1944, in a concentration camp, a Nazi officer, Klaus Schmidt, watches a young boy, Erik Lehnsherr, bend a metal gate when separated from his mother. Klaus orders Erik to show his power by threatening his mother's life. At the count of 3, Erik is not able to move the coin, and his mother is shot down. Erik gets angry and moves all the metallic substances around him in the room, and kills the guards. In Westchester County, New York, Raven, a young girl who is naturally blue and can disguise herself as anyone, enters Charles Xavier's, a young boy's, kitchen. She disguises herself as Charles' mother when he enters the kitchen. Charles realizes that it is not his mother, and Raven reveals herself. He shakes hands with Raven, allows her to have whatever she wants, and treats her like his sister. Time passes by, and it is now the year 1962. In Geneva, Switzerland, an adult Erik has a board with a picture of Klaus on it. He throws a coin on the picture. Erik goes to the bank to find the address of Klaus Schmidt by threatening the bank officer with his power by uprooting his metal tooth. The frightened officer reveals Klaus's address in Argentina. Raven has grown up into a woman and is concerned about her real look with the blue body. In Las Vegas, Nevada, CIA agent Moira McTaggart follows Colonel Hendry in a club and secretly watches and hears the conversation of Klaus, now called Sebastian Shaw, Emma Frost, a telepath, cyclone-producing Riptide, and teleporter Azazel. Shaw threatens Henry to deploy nuclear missiles in Turkey. Moira gives the information to the CIA about what she just saw, but the officials do not believe her. Moira wants more information on mutation, so she follows Charles, who has become a professor of genetic mutation. Charles has the ability to read minds and can freeze people. In Argentina, Erik goes to a bar and kills 2 old men and a bartender when an old man tries to tease and attack him. Charles drinks a large glass of beer at a party to celebrate his happiness of being a professor. Moira meets Charles and asks him about the mutations to know if they really exist. Charles is surprised after reading Moira's mind and information about the mutants. She asks him for his time for the next day, which Charles agrees to. Colonel is killed by Shaw, who has the power of absorbing energy, and Moira makes Charles give a presentation to the CIA on the mutants. But the CIA does not believe in mutants, so to prove that mutants exist, Charles reads their mind, which the CIA considers a magic trick, and Charles is now considered a spy. So Raven transforms herself into an agent, which surprises everyone, and the CIA officers order to arrest Charles and Raven. But an officer from the CIA is impressed by their abilities and agrees to take them to a secret Division X facility. Erik arrives on the ship to kill Shaw, but Emma attacks him. Moira, the officer, and Charles get into a ship to catch Shaw, but Charles is not able to contact Shaw because Emma, a similar telepath like him, is on their ship. With the help of metal rods, Erik tries to stop Emma and Shaw from escaping, but they get into a submarine. Charles jumps into the water and stops Erik from chasing Shaw's submarine, as Erik would drown and die. The officer takes Moira, Raven, Erik, and Charles to the Division X facility, where they meet Hank, who has created a supersonic plane. Charles reads Hank's mind and understands that he is a mutant. Hank shows his big feet to everyone. Shaw gets a special helmet made by the Russian army, protecting his mind from being read. Raven goes to Hank to create a serum to control her mutation. Hank takes Raven's blood to create it. Suddenly, Erik passes by and says that he would never want to control his mutation. Erik takes Shaw's file and tries to escape from the CIA. Charles stops him and promises to help him and makes him understand the need to be with them, as Shaw has got his friends and can easily defeat Erik. Charles and Erik decide to find the mutants without the help of the CIA. Charles, Raven, Erik, and Hank enter a room to test Cerebro, a device that enhances Charles's telepathic ability and prints whenever Charles' mind finds a mutant. Charles tries the device and encounters many mutants such as Angel Salvador, Armando Munez, Alex Summers, and Sean Cassidy. Emma warns Shaw that Charles and the team are recruiting mutants, and his powers have amplified, which is a threat. Shaw assures Emma to take care of Charles and his men and sends her to Russia. Charles is touched by getting into the minds of the mutants, but Erik has a fear that after their job of stopping the war is over, they will be eliminated and experimented on. Raven, Hank, and the other mutants display their abilities and name themselves a code name, including Raven giving herself the name Mystique. The officer and Moira go with the proposal of recruiting mutants for the CIA. One of the officers calls them a freak, but the other officer calls them hardworking and dedicated people. Raven, Hank, and the other mutants party in their room, making Moira, Charles, and Erik angry. Moira, Charles, Erik, and the mutants now travel to Russia. They come across a region that was not present on the map. Charles controls the mind of the Russian military and makes them feel like their vehicle is empty, though Charles and the mutants are sitting at the back of the vehicle. Charles reads the mind of a soldier and gets to know that Emma is visiting the senior Soviet official without Shaw accompanying her. So Moira decides to abort the mission. Erik leaves them and decides to kill Emma. Erik attacks the soldiers and enters the mansion of the Russian official. Charles rushes to help Erik and puts the Russian officer to sleep. Emma takes her diamond form so that Charles cannot read her mind. Erik ties her to a bed with metal and tries to kill her when she does not reveal Shaw's address. Charles stops Erik and reads Emma's mind and realizes that Shaw is planning for a nuclear war, so they decide to take Emma to the CIA. Shaw wears a helmet and enters the CIA along with Riptide and Azazel, and they kill most of the people in the CIA. He finally enters the mutants' room and tries to brainwash them so that the mutants will join his army. Angel joins him. Munoz fakes of joining him in order to save Angel, but is killed by Shaw. Shaw and his team escape with Angel. Shaw meets the Russian general in Moscow and forces him to install missiles in Cuba. Charles and Erik come back to the CIA and decide to train the mutants. The Russians and Americans get ready for the war. Charles trains all the mutants and helps them discover and sharpen their abilities. Erik makes Raven understand that she needs to accept herself the way she is before society will accept her. Charles controls Erik's mind and gets a beautiful memory of him with his mother, which helps Erik use his powers without the help of pain and anger. Charles, Moira, and the mutants watch the president's address, which states that the nuclear war is about to happen. The Soviet missile ships reach Cuba and the tension increases. All the diplomatic efforts go useless, and there is a warlike situation in America with people overbuying things. Hank gives Raven a surprise serum that can change her appearance but not her abilities. Raven accepts herself and stops Hank from using the serum, but he believes that society won't accept them and takes the serum with him. Charles and Erik play a game of chess and discuss Shaw and the nuclear war. Charles wants to stop the war and save the world. On the other hand, Erik wants to kill Shaw and believes that once the war would end, the mutants would be captured. Hank injects the serum and feels happy to see his toe as normal as others, but after some time, his condition worsens and he turns into a beast. Raven falls in love with Erik and does not feel bad anymore to be in her blue form. Charles, Moira, Erik, and the mutants get into a plane to stop the war. Charles controls the minds of a soldier and makes him fire on Shaw's ship. The Russian chief congratulates the soldier for stopping the nuclear war. Shaw realizes that Charles is around, so he wears the helmet and moves to a backup plan. Charles is not able to find Shaw as he is underwater, so they send Sean, who successfully finds the location of Shaw with the help of sonic waves. Charles controls Erik's mind and helps him use his power to bring Shaw's submarine above the water. The American and the Russian military are surprised by seeing the submarine up in the air. Riptide creates a stormy tide and the submarine and Charles's plane crash land on a desert. Charles warns the mutants of Shaw turning himself into some nuclear bomb. Erik, with the help of Charles, disables the nuclear reactor. Erik meets Shaw and Charles loses his connectivity with him. Sean helps Alex to escape, but Angel attacks them. Alex finally defeats Angel. Charles can read Erik's mind and guide him to fight with Shaw. Raven disguises herself as Shaw and stops Azazel from killing Hank. Shaw tries to win the trust of Erik and brainwashes him. Erik accepts the fact that he is a weapon today due to Shaw and helps Charles to take off Shaw's helmet and freeze him. Erik wears Shaw's helmet so that Charles cannot read his mind. Charles tries his best to stop Erik, but Erik passes a coin through Shaw's head and kills him. The Americans and the Russians come together to strike the mutants. Erik warns the mutants about the attack of the Americans, Russians, and the humans on them. Charles reads the minds of the militants and realizes that Erik is telling the truth. He signals Moira to stop the militants from attacking. Moira calls the officials, but nobody responds. The American and the Russian military fire missiles at the mutants. Erik stops the missiles with his power and reverts them to the ships. Charles stops Erik from doing it and fights with Erik. Erik releases the missiles towards the ship. Moira fires at Erik, which Erik stops, and it accidentally goes into Charles's spine. Erik removes the bullet and apologizes to Charles. Erik unknowingly releases the missiles into the water. Erik blames Moira for Charles's situation and tries to kill her. Charles stops Erik and saves Moira. Erik makes Charles understand that they need to fight with the humans and save the mutants, but Charles does not want to be on Erik's side anymore, as their thoughts do not match. Erik makes the mutants understand the need to play their games and invites them to join him. Nobody except Raven, Angel, Riptide, and Azazel join him. Raven takes a promise from Charles that he would never read her mind and goes with Erik. Charles loses his ability to walk and now uses a wheelchair. Moira names Charles and the mutants as X-Men and promises never to disclose his identity and location. The CIA questioned Moira to know more about Charles, but she does not reveal anything about him and says that she does not remember anything. In the end, Erik introduces him as Magneto and saves Emma from the prison, and she joins his force. And that was my recap of the movie. I hope you enjoyed it. Now comment on what your favorite part was, and make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, this has been Total Recap.